Hello, everyone. This is Jill Ozovek, certified professional coach, and I am very excited to be here with the Villanova University Alumni Association's Mastering Tough Conversations in the Workplace webinar. Thank you to Emily and the Villanova Alumni Association for inviting me to participate and share some information and some tactics and tips with you today about a very important topic that I don't think we get to talk enough about. A lot of times we get caught up in the day to day and what we're working on, tasks and project teams, and we can sort of overlook some of the important things regarding conversations and having really meaningful conversations and connect with our colleagues in the workplace to make those projects and those tasks and those project teams and goals even more successful. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you cannot hear the sound, just type to Emily in the chat box in your lower right part of your screen, and we can help troubleshoot that. I think I am audible at this point. My microphone little thing is moving, so I think that that's working. The webinar will last between 30 and 40 minutes, and I will take any questions on the dashboard, and I will answer them at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to ask questions on the dashboard throughout as they come up for you, and I will answer them at the end. I may ask for, there may be a few times where I'll ask for a show of hands, or if you agree or disagree with the statement, feel free to, up on the upper left part of your screen, there's a kind of a person with a hand raised. If you click the down arrow there, you can agree or disagree to whatever I'm saying there. Or it looks like you can laugh too, which is kind of exciting. So anyway, let's get started. Welcome to the webinar. This is me. I'm a certified professional coach. I graduated from a certified coaching school, certified through the International Coaching Federation, IPEC, in July of 2013. I provide group seminars, workshops, and one-on-one coaching. I do focus on millennial women, but my clients come from all walks of life, so that's exciting. Let's move on to the next slide. Just a little bit about my story before we get started. I graduated from Villanova in 2004. I was a history and sociology major, business minor. I've tended when I'm not really sure what I want to do next to sort of take a little sabbatical and figure things out. So I did that in the UK after Villanova. I came back and I fell into event production, and I worked for the largest worldwide organizer of conferences and events in the world for about 5 years in the finance division. I was promoted to the managing director of finance and was responsible for a decently large budget and a matrix team of 20 plus employees. And a lot of my perspective on this mastering tough conversations in the workplace comes from those positions. I've walked this walk before, and I understand what it's like to work in highly charged environments, political environments, calm environments, lots of different working situations through my travels and through my positions in the past. I took a sabbatical, moved to Argentina to volunteer and travel and study Spanish in 2012. I was not fulfilled by event planning anymore, even though I do still like it. And through a few months of just introspection and hanging out and figuring things out, and tough conversations with myself on what I wanted and didn't want, I fell into coaching, and here we are today. What makes me unique, my approach, my combination of, like I said before, walking your walk. I've been in many of the situations my clients have, and I have a bevy of lessons learned from my time in corporate America. And that's about it for now. So what are we doing here today? Basically, what I want you to take away from this 30 to 45 minute time we have together are either tools that you can use to evaluate your own conversations, your own interactions with people in the workplace, a different mindset, a different perspective, and also the idea of creating an awareness for yourself about your communication style and potential ramifications, drawbacks, positives that it might have on your work, your project teams, a big project you have coming up. So these are some of the things we'll be working on. We'll be helping you take stock of your current conversations. We'll provide you with tools to kickstart some difficult conversations. We'll help you understand how internal energy blocks may be affecting your conversations. And by internal energy blocks, I don't mean like, crystals and, spiritual things necessarily. I more mean um, very specific mindsets that we'll go into. And show you a sequence with which you can effectively interrogate the reality of a situation to make effective changes if needed. So maybe you joined today for your own personal skills. Maybe you're intrigued by the topic. But there are very big ramifications for a company or for a project team overall. So this is sort of a slide I put together for any naysayers that might have been like, well, communications skills are the least of my worries. I'm worrying about the bottom line. I'm worried about getting a deadline done on time. So why should I care about this? So these are just some of the many things that I've seen in my experience where having strong communication skills with your direct reports, your managers, the C-level people, your customers, your vendors, all those sorts of different people in your work matrix, what sort of effect that can have. So building rapport, getting buy-in, resolving conflict, reducing misunderstanding. It creates efficiency, and it sets expectations. So some of the areas where this could be possible, and some of the areas where I've seen it happen, is having a successful product launch, getting a project done on time, happier employees if you're in a management position, delight of customers. We all want to delight our customers with whatever product or service we provide. It's very important. So having good communication with your customers is extremely important here. Better market reputation and placement, and your own personal happiness and contentment. We spend a really large amount of time of our lives at work, so I don't think that this particular bullet can be understated here. And then, for all of you people that might be in a P&L situation, conversation skills, communication skills with all those previous people I mentioned can have an effect on your bottom line. So I did put that in there as well. So that's the intro. Let's get started with some of the tips and tools and some of the things we'll be working with today. The first thing that I want to just bring up is the first step in this process, which is to take stock of your current conversations. I have dozens and dozens more questions than some of the ones on this slide that I do work with my clients with to help them take stock of their current conversations. Most times for my clients, it's people that are starting their own business or changing career or want to advance in their current career. But these questions can be adapted for your personal relationships as well, with your spouse or significant other or friends or family members. These things can cross all walks of life here. So the benefit to taking stock of your current conversation, there are several. It's a really good starting point, like I said before. It helps you secure or maintain a baseline where you're at now, so that you can figure out where you want to go from there. It also lays reality on the table. So if you're very honest with yourself when you're answering these and many other questions that you could ask yourself, you're able to really, you're not mincing words, or you're able to really see where you lie on the spectrum here. In a work situation, it avoids future derailment potentially of a project if you're able to really take stock of where you are now. And like I said, if anything comes up for you while I'm going through these slides in this conversation, please feel free to chat in the dashboard on the lower right hand of your screen. So in the coaching world, we call these energy blocks that I was talking about in the beginning, we call them gales. I guess it's always fun to have an acronym with which you can say something to people so that they can remember it. But this is what it's called. It's called a gale. And this slide is introducing what those energy blocks might be and where a few places in the workplace they could manifest themselves. So Gales are gremlins, assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs. There's a few places in the workplace. There are quite a few places in the workplace affected by Gales. I should have written that instead of what I did write. This list could go on and on and on. I mentioned some of them before. I haven't mentioned professional development or career advancement. I mean, that's a huge one. Your working relationships with your direct reports and your managers and your peers. I've seen it actually happen quite a few times with website overhaul or a website redesign. I've worked with quite a few companies in my coaching capacity and in my event planning capacity where lack of communication is totally manifested or seen on their website. You just have no idea what the website's about. So that's a big one. Marketing strategy. I mean, your go-to-market strategy can be hugely affected by some of these internal blocks. Making business development goals and numbers. I mean, if you're in the sales department at your company, not having strong communication, good conversation with your fellow salespeople or your manager can really wreak havoc on your success as a salesperson. And aligning with other teams in the organization. So obviously, marketing and sales work very closely with one another. I've seen it happen where marketing and sales do not talk, and it really does affect the go-to-market strategy. It really does affect the bottom line through numbers. So let's see, where else have I seen that? One other thing to mention here is people might on the line, or people that I've talked to about this, like some of my clients, they say, well, I'm too busy to really have conversation. We're an email-based culture. We email everything to one another. So you can really fall easily into the busy trap here. And the busy trap is important to recognize, because just taking the few extra minutes up front to go and have a face-to-face and have maybe a tougher conversation than just shooting an email off to someone can save you time, money, etc. down the line on a specific project. So keeping in mind the busy trap is important here. So what the heck are the Gales? It looks like the first letter of each is kind of lighter than I had anticipated. So that says gremlins, assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs. We're going to go into each of these in more detail, but here are some definitions for you. Gremlin would be the inner critic that says you're not X enough, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not savvy enough, you're not whatever. And this can manifest itself in sales department, for example. Again, I'm not salesy enough. I can't make my numbers. I'm not good enough for that. The traditional definition of this is just because something happened in the past, it will happen again. That's essentially what you say to yourself when you're making an assumption about something or someone. Interpretations, an opinion or judgment that you create about an event, situation, person, or experience and believe to be true. That's a big one as well. And then I saw on the dashboard, someone had mentioned asking what a limiting belief was, and I'm sorry that definition wasn't on the previous slide, but a limiting belief is something that you accept about your life, yourself, your world, or about the people in it that limits you in some way. We'll go into some examples of each of these next. So our less positive communication dynamics in the workplace often stem from one of these four. And we'll go into some specifics and we'll talk more about that now. If I can get the slide to go. Okay. So here's a little exercise to break before we go into some examples of each of the Gales. And what I want you to do, you can write it down, you can just think about it. These slides will be available afterwards on the Villanova website, so you can just listen for now and do it later. I want you to think back to when you were taking stock of your current conversations about 10 minutes ago. When you were thinking about direct reports or managers or other team members at your company. And I want you to think of two people you interact with on a regular basis where you wish the interaction or interactions went differently. Now, now that you know what the definition of each of the Gales are, which of them are interfering with these interactions, how, and what would be different for you personally, for your company, for the project team, for your relationship with that person if this dynamic wasn't at play? Uh, and I have, with my clients, I have a whole work module where we work on this in much more detail. So that's actually a whole session that we work with, and I do some group coaching around this as well. So this is a very quick taste of what some of the exercises you could be doing with yourself or with a group at your office to take stock of this stuff. Does anyone have any takeaways? If you have any takeaways about this exercise or what you came up with, please feel free to type it into the dashboard. So moving on for now, I will get to any questions at the end, like I said. We're going to work on some challenging limiting beliefs. So this is the L in Gale. So I would like to give you the reminder that a limiting belief is something that you accept about life and yourself, the world, the people in it that limits you in some way. So a couple of examples of this. These are examples that my clients have come to me with, or I have experienced specifically, or a friend has told me about. So these are things that are pretty universal. An example could be I watch everyone around me on the trading floor get promoted, and they're all men, and there just aren't promotions for women in finance, if I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. Or they only award promotions to hungry young guys, not middle-aged dudes like me. Or a mom that's coming back from maternity leave, never going to be able to get in the rat race, maybe not rat race. I'm never going to be able to get back into the corporate ladder and climbing it because they just don't want moms to be, they just don't think moms are willing to work hard enough for that. Those are all examples of limiting beliefs. So some of the questions to ask yourself to change the pattern of that are as follows. How true is that belief really? Where did you get that idea from? How has that belief affected you? How, if at all, can you let that belief go? And an action step, how can you put that new belief into action immediately? What are some of the things that you might need to research with reference to the mom coming back from maternity leave, like I mentioned before? What are some of the what's some of the research or some of the information you might need to find to start challenging that? Some of these questions that you can ask yourself can happen from within. You can have these conversations with yourself about these limiting beliefs, but there might be some information you need to go seek out to see how true that belief is really, and how easy it can be to let it go. And if it is the case at your company, if you're a new mom and they don't offer promotions, and you've done all the research and every indication shows you that, where can you go to be able to let that belief go, and how can you put that into action immediately? So there are always workarounds to limiting beliefs in specific situations. So assumptions. Assumptions are the notion that just because something happened in the past, it'll happen again. If a belief system about a particular colleague or project or initiative isn't serving you in a favorable way, it can be changed to a belief system more aligned with your values. That's basically the gist of beginning to challenge an assumption. So the main question to ask yourself here is simply, just because XYZ happened in the past, why must it happen again? For example, experience that I had specifically at one of my previous posts was a manager that was very very hot-heady and you just never knew when they were going to explode on you. It could be for something big or small, and it was very stressful. So the main question I had started to ask myself was, just because so and so exploded in the past, why must that happen again? And I went through a series of questioning. Oftentimes the answer was, that's just the way he or she is. There's no changing it. So the question then remains, how the question now becomes, and how do you handle that? So continuing to challenge assumptions with a working group, at work, or with a coach, or with a friend, can really help you change your reality if possible, and also if it's not possible, provide you with tools and ways to move forward with with a new procedure or process. Challenging interpretations. So just realizing there are other ways to look at something lessens the power of the interpretation. Um, I had a client whose manager always asked her to stay late to work on projects that the client thought that she should be doing, that the manager should be doing. So there was a lot of, what a jerk, like my time's not valuable. Is that what she's saying? All that kind of thing. So with that particular interpretation, just realizing that there are other ways to look at something lessens the power of it. So questions to ask yourself here if you're in a situation like that, or dozens of other situations, frankly, would be, what's another way to look at that? What would someone else, your spouse, your friend, another colleague, Bob down the street, say about that? What would someone who had the completely opposite point of view from yours say about the situation? So that really, really, really tries to get you out of your own box, out of your own head. That's one of my favorite ones when I have a similar reaction, because I definitely do have similar reactions when things like that might occur. And another really powerful one is just name 5 other interpretations for that situation. Just put it all out there on the table, name 5 other interpretations, and see what else could be going on here with the particular person, with the circumstances surrounding the person, and how you react to that. All right, so we just saw a bunch of ways that we can be tripped up by our own internal belief systems. I gave you a few examples for each of the 4 Gales, for example. Now I want us to start looking at how those beliefs can be manifested in your communication style, and how it can vary person to person. And by that I mean how it can vary with how you specifically react or interact with a direct report, a colleague, a manager, a C-suite type person, a customer, a vendor. You could have different communication styles for different people. Just because you have one communication style for one person doesn't mean that across the board you interact that way. So um, this is the first one, passive. You can just read the characteristics, but basically you don't say what's on your mind. You don't really take too much responsibility for making decisions. The consequences, you have to live with the decision of others, and it sends the message that, quote, I'm weak and inferior, you are the one in power. So an example of this could be a project team wallflower. You're on a big project team to, for example, relaunch a website. I seem to be stuck on that one today. And you don't really say much about where you think the project should go, and then some of the consequences could be resentment builds. Future projects get derailed. Future parts of the project could get derailed through this negative lens that you're approaching things with. So being aware of where in your work matrix of all those people I've kept mentioning, where you fall, if any of it falls in this passive category, to just be aware of that. As I mentioned before, one of the key takeaways from this short time we have together is to help you see where your communication style is across different people. And I have a tool that's coming up in a couple slides to help you organize your thoughts on that. So that's the passive communication style. Aggressive. So I'm sure we have either been in these shoes of being an aggressive communicator, or have been at the receiving end of it, and we know what it's like. Honest statements at the expense of others. You kind of get that whoa, like taken aback feeling in the pit of your stomach. Maybe, at least I have in the past when I've been approached with this sort of communication style. Creates resentment on both parts and limits creativity. People don't feel like they can speak their mind, for example. And it sends the message this particular one sends is, you better not go against me. So I'm sure we can think of times when we've played that part or been on the receiving end of that part. And then lastly, assertive communication style. So your feelings, opinions, and wants are expressed without violating the rights of others. Um, there's active participation for both parties. You don't alienate people, and you send the message of respectful exchanging of ideas and solutions. So this is the tool I was talking about like 3 minutes ago. One of the tools I use with clients, one of several, to assess the communication style is basically an expanded version of this chart that I had to fit on one little slide here. But the idea here is that you can copy paste this chart into a Word document or Excel or whatever you like to use and expand the cells to make it bigger. And you can check mark where appropriate. You can document examples in each of these boxes. Um, like I said, a large part of this and other communication seminars is making yourself aware of your patterns. And there's really, there are several ways to do it, but one of the ways that I think is manageable and looks very organized and easy to see is using something like this to really understand how you, for example, are you passive with a manager, assertive or aggressive, and how. So marking those boxes up to really gather your thoughts and see where you fall here. I can't stress that enough, because you take the time to do this sort of exercise now. You take the time, maybe sit quietly at work for the beginning part of the day, a half hour before you start your day, and think about doing this and actually do it. And that's sort of, I tell my clients that's a lot of I don't like to use the word battle, but I'm using it here. It's like part of the battle here. It's very eye-opening. And then the changes that you can make through knowing these sort of patterns you have will come more easily once you acknowledge and recognize that these are some of the ways you interact with certain people. So real thinking happens when people are open to exploring all viewpoints. That is what we're going to move on to next. We're going to move on to applications of communication styles and the Gales to doing two different things: getting reality on the table, which we'll start with now, and I'm also going to give you some applications for one-on-one meetings. We're already at 12:30, which I cannot believe, by the way. But there are so many different situations or scenarios that you can apply this to, and really, I only have time for these two. But I do work with people on lots of other scenarios. I just thought these two would be appropriate for a large group of people where I don't know where everyone's coming from on this webinar. So, applications of communication styles and Gales to getting reality on the table. So this, by getting reality on the table, what I mean here is maybe a project team that has a really tough goal to meet. Maybe you're down in sales for the first half of the year, and the people at the top are saying, okay, we need to double our sales from the first half of the year to even come close to hitting our full year projections, for example. And there's a project team of sales and marketing people that need to work together to figure out how to do this. So the most important part of this is getting reality on the table, really understanding where you're at right now, really gaining the perspective of every member of the project team, which, if you've been in meetings like I have, doesn't always happen. There's always a few, maybe 2 or 3 people that really shout out what they think, and it can be at the expense of some good ideas from some other people. So this is written, this slide and some of the things in it are written from the perspective of sort of the project lead or the person holding the meeting or series of meetings around whatever the project might be. But you can easily turn this into, if you're not the project lead or meeting leader, you can turn this into things that you can use as the meeting attendee on how to speak up, for example. So from the meeting lead perspective, always start with a proposal, or at the very least a definition of the issue at hand, even if you don't have a proposal. So in my example of first half sales, second half sales, hey guys, our issue at hand here is that we don't have, we're very behind on sales. We do not have the staff or the resources at this point to make up for what senior management needs right now. So my proposal is XYZ to actually get to the goal that they have set for us. Secondly, check for understanding from each person. I mean, you can do this in several different ways. You can go around the room and manually ask. You can ask for nods of understanding or raise hands if you don't understand, and wait. A lot of times we ask questions and we give about 3.1 nanoseconds for people to answer, and people are thinking. So people are not aware of what you're about to say. So when you say it, you need to actually give some time here. Um, Check for agreement and disagreement. So I have in the past, when I told you I was the head of the finance division at the company I worked at for nearly 5 years, and yeah, 5 years, and sorry, my microphone just went weird. Sorry about that. Um, I have gone around the table and asked manually for agreement and disagreement from each person and getting their perspective. So, keeping in mind the following: know your audience, their roles and temperaments are important. Maybe they come from multiple backgrounds at the company, so they'll have a different perspective from your own. So, keeping that in mind. If someone does disagree, the above step where you're checking for agreement or disagreement, resist the temptation to defend immediately. The reason I say that is if you're asking for open commentary and understanding and agreement and disagreement, and then immediately say, "Well, that'll never work, Bob, because A, B, C, D, E, F," then you're basically telling people, "Yeah, I told you I wanted input, but not really. So I was just doing that for show." So keeping that in mind. Um, I said this a little bit ago, call on every individual at the table if you're leading the meeting. Figure out a way to have your voice heard if you're at the meeting. And I did like this quote. I saw this quote and I liked it for this part of the webinar. Nothing is more dangerous than an idea when it's the only one you have. Okay. Whoa, time is flying. Sorry, everyone. I'm getting really wrapped up in this because I love talking about this stuff. So here's the second application that we have time for. Applications to one-on-one meetings. Um, One-on-one meetings are super important, whether you're meeting with a direct report or you're meeting with a manager. Um, it helps to open the lines of communication. It helps to maintain a good rapport. A lot of those things in one of the earlier slides I said, where it helps build rapport, get buy-in, resolve conflict, reduce misunderstanding. We live in this email culture where a lot of companies, business and day-to-day business is conducted over, a gazillion emails. I remember I used to get about 200 answerable emails a day that were not spam, and it was intense. And a lot of my time could have been saved, and other people's time could have been saved by actually getting up and having one-on-one meetings. Pitfalls to avoid as the manager and the direct report. So some of the things you want to avoid doing most of the talking, taking the problem away from someone. So someone comes to you with an issue and you sort of take it off of their plate and make it someone else's problem, or negate the severity of the issue. That doesn't solve anything because the issue is still the issue. Not inquiring about where the person is at, delivering an unclear message or instruction, canceling the meeting, or allowing for interruptions at the meeting. A lot of that can really feed into a lot of those gales we talked about before. So if you're a manager that you're constantly canceling a meeting with your direct reports, or allowing for interruptions and answering your cell phone, or on your email while someone's talking, you're really helping feed into a lot of those gales, like the assumption, especially where just because something happened before, um, it's going to happen again. If you're meeting with a direct report, you could be adding to that sort of assumption level they have, or an interpretation that you just don't care. It might be harder for someone to come up with 5 other interpretations of your constantly letting your meetings be canceled or interrupted. So just keeping in mind that some of these behaviors with one-on-one meetings as a manager or as the direct report can make it harder for people to overcome some of these internal energy blocks. And you can start to see how these things feed off of one another, it's sort of like this vicious circle, essentially. Let's see. So questions to ask yourself about your one-on-ones. having really like frank conversations with yourself. What is the most difficult behavior to change about your one-on-one meetings? Why is it so difficult? And that goes back to the Gale work we were just talking about. What changes can you put in place today to create a shift in your relationships now? What's your pie in the sky goal for your meeting, your one-on-one meetings, and your communications directly with direct reports or your manager? And what would it take you to get there? So one of the other things, once we work through all this inner work, my clients, whether it's group coaching or one-on-one coaching, we start to put into place some goals to get to this pie in the sky goal. What are some interim ways you can start to put things in place now so that you can start to see results and feel a little bit of the momentum and the forward motion now. So, conclusion. So the idea here is just like I said, we had a very short amount of time. It was interesting. I'm very interested in this topic. I love talking about talking, I guess you could say. Um, so it was really difficult. It was an interesting exercise to put all this slide deck together because there's literally no limit to what you could talk about here. Everyone has a different situation and perspective. We could go on all day about this, but we obviously don't have the time. So like I said, the major takeaway I wanted you to have is to just start to think about, the awareness of your conversations and how you're interacting with people in the workplace and how they might be interacting with you in the different interplay between employees and colleagues. Um, Taking stock of your current communications, using a series of targeted questions that work for your position. There are a bunch on the slide. If you're interested in getting more of these questions from me, my email is coming up. My email on the next slide is coming up, so feel free to email me directly, and I can provide you with a ton of other questions that might also augment some of the ones on the slide. Understand Gail and where she comes from and challenge her. We do not spend a lot of time. I say this all the time. We go to college. I mean, you all are Villanova alumni or at Villanova now. We all go to school, and I said, a history and sociology major with a business minor. I learned a lot there. We all learned a lot at our college. However, there are no real classes on personal development and on taking stock of some of these softer issues that actually have big consequences to business. So understanding Gail and where she comes from and recognizing your communication style is really important, and we don't spend a lot of time doing it. Understand how all the above comes together to affect your relationships at work and elsewhere, frankly. I mean, everything's connected. Just because work is work, it doesn't mean that your communication style is left at the door necessarily. You might bring some of that home. You might bring some of that, to the philanthropy work you might do, or with friends. So keeping in mind that it all comes together and affects everything potentially. And then take the leap. In this particular webinar, we had time to talk about one-on-one meetings and interrogating reality regarding a project. There are so many more scenarios, like I said, but pick one of these areas or another one that you're dealing with now and apply some of these things that we talked about today. So keep in touch. Here's what I offer once again. My website is myname.com, jillozovek.com. My Twitter is there, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, and my email is jill@jillozovek.com. And like I said, please feel free to reach out to me with any potential questions you might have. If you want more of the questions to, interrogate your own conversations and all those other things we were talking about, I'm happy to share. One of the things that I believe as a coach is that, sharing with the Villanova community or the community at large with my knowledge and experience, I'm more than happy to do that. I did have a resource page that I must have deleted, but I can also send you some resources. One of my favorite books about conversations is called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. I literally ate that book up. I really, really enjoyed it. There's a ton of exercises in there as well. I use some of them with my clients, and I have some of my own. But Fierce Conversations with Susan Scott. And if you're interested in more resources, I can also email that to you if you want to get in touch at jill@jillozovek.com. I'm just going to check the dashboard quickly. I saw some, yeah, I saw some comments come in. But yeah, pretty much we answered all these things. Yep, I will send out resources or include them in the PowerPoint that's posted online. Emily, I will get that to you either later today or tomorrow. And that's about it for me. I really enjoyed talking with you today. It was super fun to do my first webinar with the Alumni Association. I am looking forward to being more involved as a coach and as a mentor or events person for the Villanova Alumni Association, especially on campus and in the Manhattan chapter where I live. And thank you so much. Once again, I really, really appreciate you attending, and I hope you got something out of it. Thank you.